People who have been to prison, jail, etc. Why? What's it like? Was not fun. Did 36 months for VOP when I was 24. My cellmate decided he was gonna force me to give him head the first week. After a few weeks of that, he started to pee in my mouth while holding my head down and made me swallow it. He would punch me in the ribs if I didn't do as he said, so I stopped fighting it. He was much bigger and stronger than me, and me being young, white and not affiliated in a gang or not the type to fight made me an easy target. That eventually progressed into him forcing himself on me at night and other degrading things I won't mention in this post. The abuse lasted for months and got progressively worse and more violent and aggressive. I finally built up the courage to tell somebody and they moved me to another prison. I was in therapy for years dealing with the trauma after I got out. Thankfully I didn't catch any diseases, but it fricked me up. I am sorry to read that. Made me sad. I had to spend 24 hours in a jail because a policeman decided they would accuse me of DUI. Lots of paperwork and then taken to the hospital for blood work. Cottoed, driven an hour away and thrown into a cell because the town's jail was shut down, which is why I figure they were just trying to generate revenue. It's all concrete and there is zero to do. They had given me some paper explaining it, so I spent my time flying paper airplanes and kicking paper footballs and practicing standing on one leg. Bend your knee slightly helps with the balance. The food fricking sucked and they didn't give me access to my meds, so I was pretty screwed up the next day. The judge to determine if I could be released after he had spent the morning fishing. When my wife called in the bail, she paid the bail bondsman extra for them to drive me back to where my car was. The whole experience is pretty much designed to be as unpleasant as possible. Got booked in for a crime I didn't commit and bailed myself out the same day. You go in and get fingerprinted and photographed, and they take all of the stuff out of your pockets and search you for weapons and contraband. Then you go sit in a holding cell and you are literally told to just sit there. Don't talk to anyone. Ask permission if you have to get up and use the bathroom. Don't move. There was a little TV up in the corner of the room playing the Discovery Channel. One of the bathrooms had no working lights, and the other one had broken plumbing. The whole place was pretty dirty and smelled very bad. They brought us a brown bag lunch consisting of the cheapest worst bologna you've ever seen, with a slice of generic American cheese on 2 slices of white bread, and a packet of mustard. There were carrot slices and some Hydrox cookies, and a bottle of water. It was very tense, except that it was also insanely boring. Nothing to do except sit there for hours and not move. You weren't allowed to get up and walk or stretch. You'd occasionally hear someone really lose it and flip out and start screaming, and maybe the guards would tackle him or take him somewhere else. There's quite a mixture of people in jail, from white collar crimes and petty theft awaiting court, to crazy people or drunks detoxing, to actual violent criminals. The holding cell I was in was mostly people who looked like they'd had a DUI or something. Since we weren't allowed to talk, that was all I know. My few interactions with the guards were all very demeaning. They loved to talk down to everyone. Then they called my name. I paid the bail and signed paperwork, and walked out the door. Went to court a couple of days later and got it cleared up. Now I have a mugshot and an interesting story. I was there about 6 hours. Prison is its ecosystem. Numerous factors will impact a person's experience in prison. For example, I was a white-collar criminal with money continuously on the books for commissary. I was not associated with any gang, and my prison sentence was short, 2 years and 6 months. All the data above contributed to my experience in prison. I was not part of a gang, which affected the persons I interacted with, as gang members most frequently interact with members of the same team. The persons I interacted with most were non-gang associated. A twist to this is that while in prison, I had money, so gang members were willing to speak with me in a limited business sense. How inmates are paired, matched, and assigned a cell is based on the inmate's influence and wealth. Initially, that mixed everyone up, and as months passed by and the prison better knows an inmate, the inmate room matching gets better. I was assigned to Block 29 at Dixon Correctional Center in Illinois. Block 29 was for the most influential inmates and those with wealth. I paid a porter to wash my clothes and clean. I lived like royalty in prison. Please remember that I have money on the books all the time, and I am university educated, which puts me in the 1% of prisoners. Most inmates will not have a similar experience. Lastly, the type of crime influences your prison experience. I mentioned earlier that I was a white-collar criminal. On another note, if you are a convicted rapist or child abuser, you will have the worst prison experience because inmates discriminate based on the crime committed in prison. If you committed aggravated battery to a police officer, you will get honor and respect. Most gangs will not harass you and may invite you to join them. That sums up my experience. It was awful. I was so consumed with frustration, knowing I had no income, whilst my friends and family prospered around me. Fortunately, I rolled a double soon after and my Monopoly game continued. But you don't get the chance of falling into another player's property and lose money. It feels safe when everyone else has almost all the properties. In Florida it's great. Between the police not telling you why you were arrested on top of having proof that you're the victim of domestic abuse and your partner was lying, they'll still arrest you and have you sit 10 hours in a holding cell with no water or anything before getting booked to a cell. Then you will wait another 4 hours before reviewing anything related to your case, which the first court appearance is in 15 minutes, and then you wait another 7 hours after your bail is posted. During the early days of World War II, I, an American citizen since birth, was arrested and imprisoned for being of Japanese ancestry and so noted in a job application under ethnicity. I was released a week later when I received my birth certificate from my family that displayed my birth in the US. No apologies received. I was not well received in jail and was threatened with beatings, which were avoided because I was placed in solitary confinement. Terrible. Prison and jail are two different places. Prison is actually better. Feel free to ask any questions, but you never want to go there. 0/10 not recommended. DUI. Yeah, I know. Not proud of it. They put you in a cell for like 4 hours. At least in VA. Pretty big cell. But there was another guy in there for IDK what sleeping the whole time and he smelled like a mix of pee crap vomit. Worst 4 hours of my life. Domestic assault third. I entered a plea deal and was charged with a lesser charge. I ran from the cops for 3 hours before turning myself in and spent the night in jail waiting for a bail hearing with a judge notorious for giving people mid-high bails and was unheard of for letting people out on their own recognizance. I was let out on my own recognizance for some unexplainable reason. Jail was weird. It was the second worst rated jail in the country as well. 8-10 women were packed into a 15x15 cell during the height of COVID. Literally some people sitting on the toilets just because there wasn't any space. Once they had their bail hearing, it was just me until another lady came. The light was on all night. There was a constant buzzing sound that made you feel crazy. And there wasn't a clock, so we had no clue what time it was. It was so dehumanizing. Nothing like the movies or overly dramatized shows make it out to be. All it is a big bum storage facility. Everyone wants you to believe it's a tough, dangerous place when in fact you're just fighting boredom and the constant presence of absolute idiots who are locked up with you. Why I was in, I won't mention. Interesting. Jail only. Hot, crowded, bad food, one shower for 30 guys, awful bed, boring, but not a terrible place. I was in for trespass during a civil disobedience protest, not exactly armed robbery. Jail is cold, uncomfortable, insanely boring, occasionally dangerous, occasionally fun, and very sad, also very irritating and stressful at times. I was a drunk college kid, twice. Public intoxication in Texas. First time wasn't that bad. Got a good story out of it, but didn't want to make a habit of the drunk tank. Had some fraternity brothers waiting on me at 8 AM. Got to share an 8x8 cell with no window, or window in the door, with a few other guys. One of which told me, man, they found a bag of blow in my rental car and said it was mine. Well, was it? Yeah, but frick those cops. Really cracked out old guy told me that. We didn't speak much after that. Second time was 3 years later. Truly not my fault, so I was freaking livid about it. Night of drinking. Walking to the taxi line, Uber wasn't a thing then. And a drunk guy starts running his mouth about my hair. I have long hair, like almost touching my butt long. I laughed him off. Went on my way to get to cab. He followed me. Kept it up. got close enough to push me from behind, to which I responded by punching him in the face again. Night of drinking. Probably could have gotten out of there if not for that. We wrestle around. A few punches thrown. Cops roll up. Handcuffs immediately. I knew that was a wrap, so I cooperated right away. This jail cell was a ton different county. Easily 12x40 featuring 2 bathrooms. No privacy. Long bench to sit on. One of the walls was a big window so the jailers could see what was going on. I also had probably 15 other guys in there, at least in this case. All these guys were quiet because they just wanted to leave, so they just did what they were told. No issues here. The guy that fought with me though, different story. He was a spitter and a biter immediately. He had his own cell, and he went bananas in there, beating on the windows, telling the cops he would kill them. Kill every inmate there, screaming just crazy. I found out later he was on some drugs that night. Wasn't just a few beers for him. Long story short, once the cuffs are on, if you can remember and realize it, it's over at that point. You're going to jail. You don't have to like it, but if you cooperate, you'll have a much better time. I was out of the drunk tank in 4 hours and released. That dickface that fought with me spent 39 hours before they even processed him. So yeah, jail and drunk tank really sucks, but just cooperate and you'll have a better and smoother time. Spent 3 days in jail before my mom bailed me out for smoking weed in an apartment parking lot. LOL, it was bad at first, but if you sleep through it and keep to yourself it's not that bad. Food sucks though. Also, not having windows and not being able to go outside is kind of suffocating. Spent 5 days in jail because of a DV charge. I live in supported living and the staff was trying to barricade me in the kitchen. We got in a tussle and I pulled out one of her hair extensions because she wouldn't let me smoke before doing the dishes. I just woke up. It was the morning. Frickin' awful. No distinction between violent people and people who just needed help. You leave feeling like a monster. A twisted and deformed sense of self. I spent 10 years going in and out of juvies and jails. I'd rather be in adult jails. Juvies are far more unpredictable and hyperactive with more frequent violence, and violence which doesn't make sense. I've been in fights with kids in juvie. I still don't freaking know what the fights were about. Jail is a whole lot of boring unless you go out of your way to entertain yourself. I've been in jails with steady supplies of contraband to keep things interesting. Jail isn't scary. Mind your own business and be prepared to even just suggest that you're going to stick up for yourself. The COs are often freaking idiots. At least, sometimes complete psychos. Jails and juvies are full of people who have problems in their lives and who aren't receiving help for those problems and will likely never receive help for their problems. Our systems encourage waste. I have a relative in my life who invested in me and my rehabilitation. That's what worked. A guy said to me he got 8 years at age 17 in Stuart CTRRK, Townsville, Australia. The men were hanging out the bars trying to root him. I went to jail Thursday night for public intoxication. I wasn't intoxicated. I had just worked 12 hours and was on a new high-dose pain medication for a major traumatic injury to femur and fell asleep in my car outside my work. I was just too tired to drive. I couldn't keep my eyes open. And while I sat waiting for my phone to charge, I just got too sleepy to safely make it home and didn't have the money for an Uber back to my house. Would have been a few $100. I had set an alarm for 15 minutes around 11:30 PM but slept through it and was woken up by a cop in the early morning around 5:30 AM. Was denied a breathalyzer or blood test to prove I hadn't been drinking, despite repeatedly begging for one to prove I wasn't intoxicated. Was told I smelled like alcohol. I'm a bartender, so it checks out. I went to a holding facility for 12 hours before I was released with no charges filed. Jail was way worse than I thought it would be. I've never met such horrible and cruel people in my life as the guards there. I was treated with unbelievable disrespect and yelled at every time I asked to use the phone or asked when I would be released. No food for 12 hours, all they had was dairy based and I have a severe allergy. I have diabetes and by the time I was released I was so hypoglycemic I was vomiting water non-stop. I was kept in a big concrete room without food or water and given a plastic sheet to lay across the floor. Other women were brought in on occasion, but I was the only person there for more than an hour or two. I asked to call my job so I could tell them I wouldn't be coming in, but since I couldn't remember the number, no one would help me. Most of the time I felt like I had been put in a room and forgotten about. They kept telling me I'd be released within the hour, only for 2 or 3 more to pass. No clocks on the wall. No access to any stimulation whatsoever besides the screaming of other prisoners or the occasional verbal abuse from the guards. It was a short period of time, but I truly feel traumatized by the experience. I can't imagine what it would have been like if I had been anything other than a petite white woman with a college degree. It was a horrific experience, and I can't believe a civilized country, USA, treats people that way. I was sympathetic towards law enforcement before, but have really begun to question things now that I've seen it from the other side. Thank God it was all on body cam, so when I filed my complaint on Monday I have a reasonable case to at the very least get the arresting officer to face consequences for his actions. LOL. I ran over a police officer with my car. That was my crime. I don't really like to talk about jail because it was very unpleasant. The officer is okay. He had a minor injury and recovered quickly. Very nice young guy. I saw him later in convenience store. Jail for probation violation. Not fun. A lot of corruption. The guards do not care about you and will treat you like garbage. They do not care if you are dying on the floor, they will not help you. If you are having a problem like a spider bite or a clogged toilet for 12 hours, they will not help you until they feel like it, and if you bother them too much they will beat you up 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 in a room with no cameras. People who need to be in a padded cell are mixed with the regular inmates and don't get the help they need. There is some violence, but if you are respectful to people and are not being a smart butt, you won't have to deal with fighting other inmates. 19 less than 1 ounce green. Head bashed on car. Took fall for friend. Belt, shoes and jacket taken away. Cold and hungry, tired in holding. No clock. Bored as frick around people I considered trash. Slept under the bench till I was in my own cell. Food sucked. Can't remember what it was. Too anxious to pee or crap or sleep. Lights always on. Colder been worse. 32. Super speeder and reckless allegedly. Nice cop. Told me I was going to jail. Handcuffs hurt. Holding got a blanket and bag. Lights off. Alone. They let me look at my own crazy x-ray. They let me out to chill in their desk area to talk about tattoos and stuff. Well, I ended up in prison. Cause I robbed, I stole, and I kidnapped the president's son. And I never got caught neither. Fricking. Junkie doing junkie crap. Got on 3-year probation and faked my way through it by using my dog's urine for drug tests for 2 years and 10 months while being a full-time IV. Use a middleman to support my habit. Got caught kinda and got sentenced to my last month of probation in county jail. It was terrible and I had a super easy amount of time to do. I didn't sleep more than an hour or so a night for the first 2 weeks because of withdrawals. The food was beyond terrible. Every morning for breakfast was a handful of cornflakes, a hard-boiled egg, and 3 slices of white bread. The guards actively tried to make people as miserable as possible. It was always cold because it was January and the skylights had gaps all around them from being poorly installed. We would wake up in the morning with our water cups frozen over and little snow in the middle of the pod, etc. Boredom is a killer. It's not as bad as you think it would be. Stick to yourself, stay out of others' business and you'll be fine. I found a lot of peace in prison. It's when I woke up and realized I was wasting my life and was asleep. It was the existential crisis to me up and I was blessed to have. I had to go to prison to find freedom. How can we help inmates like relatives to kill boredom or make them feel they are loved? Thank you. Jail is fun, and the food and stuff is really good there, but, you know, I guess it's more fun outside of jail when you can still do crazy things and get better dope and get drunk all the time and stuff like that. So, it's not that we don't like jail, we just don't want to go back to jail anytime soon. So we decided, talking to people in jail, that the best thing we can do is still break the law, but do it on a lower type scale kinda thing. The worst thing about prison was the dementors. They were flying all over the place and they were scary, and then they'd come down and they'd suck the soul out of your body and ahoy. In terms of food, we had gruel sandwiches, gruel omelets, nothing but gruel. Plus, you can eat your own hair. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.